Hello everyone, welcome to the last day of workshop. Thank you ma'am for taking this session. Let's start today's workshop.
Hello and good evening, everybody who's been with us through on this entire journey of design thinking. Um, Actually, I would have hoped that we would have been able to do more interactions, and I could have mentored you in person on a live project. Then it makes sense to be calling it a workshop, because right now it's working more on a like a lecture series or a YouTube tutorial kind of a model. But nonetheless, we'll try to make the best utilization of the time that we have together. Um, in the last 4 days, we had covered a couple of things, and I would like to do a quick recap of all of them with you. We began with what design thinking is, how it is important, and probably the only solution that we have to problems which are of the nature of wicked problems. Don't essentially We don't essentially have complete knowledge about them, and the directions in which people can go or participate can be very contradictory in nature. The solutions are also not defined, and very difficult also to sometimes reach at. So design thinking is a way, it essentially is a problem solving technique which completely busts the myth of a flash of genius, because it's a set protocol, a series of steps that you need to follow in order to reach a breakthrough solution. And even when you reach that solution, it has the kind of agility to keep modifying itself or making itself better with the user as the need evolves. So we spoke about the 5-step framework given by Stanford D School. The first step being empathy. So we spoke about the different empathy techniques that you can use, be it interviews or conversations or observation, or even ethnographic research, which is called immersion, and you stay in that place. And then we spoke about how extreme users are extremely important and critical, because if you cover their needs, you have already covered the bandwidth of the entire spectrum. So, and we spoke about analogous experience. So this was the empathy part. Then we got on to problem definition and redefinition, using the POV statement framework, where dash user feels, user needs a way to fill in the blank, where you come on, put an actionable verb which will define the desirable traits of the solution, because, and then after that comes your surprise insight, something that you have discovered in your empathy research. During this phase, I had told you that how to sort a fact from an observation, from an insight. So these three are different things. I told you that how they differ from each other, and you have to become mature enough to be able to recognize what an insight is, because 99% of the time it is not very obvious, and you need to really dig deeper and spend more time with the problem and what the users are saying about it, to be able to come to that level. And it comes with practice. With everyone, it comes with practice. This is just like swimming or riding a bicycle. You cannot learn it through just hearing about it. You need to do it in practice. So I am 100% confident that you'll become more cognizant of these steps once you start applying it on any specific project. Then we go went on to prototyping, and how prototyping is a very, very important tool in the design thinking framework, because it allows you to make rough versions of your model, of your product, of your service, and quickly gain feedback from your users. So in that manner, we discuss how prototyping works, how you can role play, how you can storyboard, how you can sketch, how you can make models, and different techniques that you can deploy in order to make a presentable, somewhat tangible works like, feels like model to present it to the user. Now we come to the last part, and by last I mean the last part of the framework, but it may not necessarily be the last part of your journey, because as I said, it is iterative and you need to keep getting going back and forth. Because if you, during this phase of testing, which is the last phase of the design thinking framework, if there are any suggestions by the user that this could be added or just absolutely remove this thing, you need to do the ideation and the prototyping phase all over again. So you need to know about what this is. Moving forward, yes. So finally, we are at the testing stage of design thinking framework. Why is testing important? Firstly, because it saves time and costs by learning and iterating quickly. Yes. Say, for example, mm, yes, all of us right now who are in this call have at least 80 to 100 mobile applications on your phone. And just think about it. How often you use, most of them? You don't, right? Even if you have downloaded them and they are on your phone, some apps you use, say, once in a month or once in 10 days, once a week, something like that. Only when you need to shop something, or if you have something like a menstruation tracker or an activity tracker or an expenditure tracker, then you use them less frequently than your social media apps, like, say, a WhatsApp, which you open very frequently through the day. So think about the developer of the other apps which you don't use at all, but they're just lying there on the phone. They must have gone ahead, developed the product, launched it into the market. But if the people are still not using it, despite it being on their phone with them 24/7, it means that the need or the relevance for the product was much lesser. And this is something that you can realize much, much earlier if you do your testing in the right manner and at the right time. And it can really help you save costs. Because, for example, if the user doesn't need it at all, why go ahead and make it? And if you have to make something, then at least be mindful of what actual needs are. All right. Say, for example, an app like Facebook. It is a social media platform. It allows us to engage with people, find long lost friends, and even sometimes relatives whom you've never met in person, but they are sending you friend requests on Facebook, and really annoying. But other than that, think of the technical functionality that the app enables. I know many people right now who do not use Facebook, or or they have uninstalled Facebook from their phones because they feel it's very distracting to keep getting notifications, and it takes away from their productive time. But they still have an active Facebook account, and yet they use the same account for logging into 100 other apps. So imagine the kind of functionality they were able to envision in Facebook and build, that it becomes a necessary step to using other apps. And this kind of foresight can come only through testing and envisioning what your product can do and creating a need for that. All right. So that is why I say testing is very, very important, because it can save a lot of time and a lot of cost. Now I want to talk to you about this very special scientist. I have been a science student till class 12th, and then I went on to do design in my graduation, post graduation job, and everything. And I never found as much value in the life or learnings from the life of any other scientist than what I did from Thomas Edison, and more so because he was a revolutionary thinker, and his thinking or his way of functioning can be called as the most early setup for design thinking. He created, people give him credit for creating the electric light bulb and, wrapping an entire industry around it. And the fact is that, the light bulb wasn't originally his invention also. He just went ahead and developed it in a finer form where it can be used. What his true genius was to be able to understand that the bulb itself was just a, parlor trick or, little thing which could generate some amount of excitement. Without a system of electric power generation and transmission, it meant nothing. So he went and created that entire system. His genius lay in his ability to conceive a fully developed marketplace, not simply a discrete device. That is what truly design thinking has the power to do. It can enable you to envision how people would want to use what you have made and engineer towards that insight. So Edison wasn't always prescient, as in he wasn't always fully right about his intentions, because he thought that the phonograph that he invented would be used as a business machine for taking dictation, recording, and replaying, and taking like how a steno would work. But he invariably great consideration to users' needs and preferences, and adapted and changed his products according to what he understood or made sense of the users. Most people believe that Edison's greatest invention was the modern R&D laboratory and the methods of experimental investigation. He wasn't a narrowly specialized scientist with how you typically envision them, with curly hair and uncombed and clothes are tattered and just working. He was a broad generalist. He knew his science, but he knew that he could not create a truly magnificent product or invention without the help of others. And that is why he built his Menlo Park, New Jersey laboratory. He surrounded himself with people from very, very diverse background, gifted thinkers, gifted improvisers and experimenters. There were psychologists, biologists, and people from all walks of life. So he completely broke the myth of the lone genius inventor and created a team-based approach to creating new things, to innovation, to entrepreneurship. That is his most remarkable contribution to the world of science, to the world of innovation, and also to the world of design thinking. That's why I have shared with you his most famous quote that he said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." And with this, I want to emphasize that you need to fail early, fail fast, and fail forward so that you can go on to your next ingenious discovery, the product. Now, when you do testing, there are a few prerequisites, some conditions that you need to meet. One is that you need to select appropriate customers, people who will be willing to, spend that much of time and, dedicate that much of energy to your product. Secondly, when you engage with these customers with and the prototype, choose the context in which they will interact with the prototype, whether it is a workplace invention, whether it is a home, because you need to create that environment for the customers to be able to fully give a comprehensive feedback. That is why I had discussed with you a customer journey map yesterday, so that you see the experience in its entirety. Then when you run the experiment, the third step is going to be capture all of their feedback. Okay. Another prerequisite is that customer selection is very, very important, because you need to build customers for a product that has not been launched, people whom you can trust, whom are not shrewd enough to manipulate their answers or steal your intellectual property. You have to select customers who will be honest, who will provide you time and effort, and customers who are conducive and they have the required mindset to be able to co-create and work with them. Also, select a diverse set of users so that you get feedback from different people, and as the broader the set of your customers, the more likely that your product, the eventual product that you go ahead and launch, will have a larger acceptability. All right. And while you're testing, make sure that you have time. If you don't have enough time, then schedule it for a time when you can give a larger time slot. You have to be patient with them, to not rush them, and note down their questions and critiques. If something that it's not very evident from the prototype. So the whole golden rule of prototyping and testing, because I'm calling this phase together because it is sort of incomplete without one another, complementary in nature. So you need to let your prototype or your model do the talking and speak as little as possible. It should explain itself. If it is not explaining and the users are, asking more and more questions, it means that you need to include those things in your design, in your product, in your service, so that it becomes that much more intuitive in nature. Do not try to sell it. Don't try to pitch the product, because it completely negates the purpose. Because I've seen students in the final stages of the design thinking workshop where we ask them to present their product. They become very emotionally attached to it. So then at that point, it is very difficult to debate with them. And because they don't realize that it is a futile exercise, you cannot possibly defend your product or service to everyone. Once it is out in the open, in the market, then it is competing with millions of apps and products and services that are there in the market already. And who all will you hold collars and make them understand what you actually wanted to say? So do not try to sell it. Do not try to mm, defend your product, or your discovery. Be like a sponge. You need to absorb every piece of feedback, good, bad. In fact, the bad ones are more and more important, because they give you that much more a realistic picture into what possible pitfalls can be there in the future. Be very open to their feedback and keep a collaborative mindset. Always know that what they are saying is going to help you. So whenever you talk to someone during a testing phase, after prototyping, know that whatever they are saying is just going to help. Because if you keep that in mind, you will be much more open to listen to whatever they have to say. All right. So I wanted to show you something.
Most people are familiar with the concept of design. However, it's important to remember that design principles apply to more than just the objects around us. Design is everywhere. Our public infrastructure and urban environments are designed. Our governance systems are designed. Even the structure of our organizations and teams is a result of design. Because so many of these systems are consciously designed, there's a growing interest in developing a reliable model that can describe how the process of design actually works. This is called design thinking. Design thinking is a set of strategies that can help people make effective design choices. Making these choices can be harder than it sounds, and that's because, like all decisions, design decisions are related to human psychology. Let's examine 4 core tenets of design thinking through the lens of psychology to see some of the potential pitfalls to good design. First, there needs to be a clear, unbiased understanding of the design problem itself. If you were designing a grocery store, you might assume that shoppers are mostly influenced by the layout of the aisles, displays, and signs. But it turns out that when actually observing shoppers' behavior, many adults actually follow predefined scripts centered around their smartphones. Thus, a companion app could have a bigger impact. Next, it's important to view the problem from several perspectives. GE was struggling to create a medical suit that could protect healthcare workers from viruses and bacteria. Existing suits were problematic, so they decided to reframe, or look outward, and collaborating with a wedding gown designer helped the team find a simpler and more effective design. The next stage is all about ideation as a group, or brainstorming. It might seem like this process is inherently free form, but the famous design firm IDEO treats this process as highly structured. By using common sets of prompts and questions, and focusing on tactile and visual cues instead of text, IDEO was able to formalize the process of brainstorming. This final stage focuses on rapid prototyping. Air New Zealand was trying to come up with a new seat configuration for their long-haul flights. They used existing office furniture to make a quick prototype in a bunk bed style and had the team try it out. They hated this first iteration and returned to the drawing board. However, this experiment was a major success in that it allowed the airline to avoid a costly first design mistake. To learn more about potential pitfalls to good design,
Excuse me, ma'am, your mic is mute.
Sorry, I think I forgot to unmute myself. I wanted to tell you something. Yes, I was saying that, the reason for playing this video was to make you understand that how every step of the design thinking framework is a build up for the next, and how you can use it to understand the process, and it becomes more and more clear the more you move ahead. Okay. Now, while you're thus testing, what is important for you is to capture every bit of the feedback. Either you record their voice, record the video, or capture their body language, capture their facial reaction, and always work in pairs. One is asking follow-up questions to stimulate the feedback, and the other one should be taking detailed notes. Also, one very important trick that I learned with, after working with students is that, the person who does the interview for testing should not, if that person is not the person of the concept development or the prototyping team, then it works better because there is a lesser likelihood of that person being tempted to sell the concept. So you can do that when you have a bigger group. You can make that kind of arrangements that, the prototyping team does not go out for testing. All right. Also, do not conduct testing in groups, focused groups, because especially for complex problems like wicked problems that we are discussing right now, focus group discussions don't work. They work really in the FMCG sector. And when you are using solving complex problems which involve behavioral issues, you should always focus on single interactions and their unbiased emotions on a one-to-one level. Because if it is in a group, there is more likely to, there will be one leader and the other people will be just, echoing their voice. So don't do that because it defeats the purpose. I want to show you another important video which explains testing really well.
that I'm going to talk about is called test. I'm not going to say this is the final phase because we may learn something that takes us back to research, to ideation. So this might not actually be the end of the process. And just a reminder, I said that this could actually be an infinite loop that we are on in terms of our design thinking process. This is why. Some things are never finished. How often do you get a notification that you have apps that need to be updated? How often do websites need to be updated and redesigned? There are some things that we make in the digital world these days that are never actually finished. They are never complete. Didn't always used to be this way, but it is a fact of the way that we design and work these days. Some things are finished. A movie is finished. A book is finished. Brochures are printed.
that does not mean that we can't reflect and learn on those things that actually do leave the warehouse or screened or broadcast or delivered in some form. We can reflect and learn on those, and that is the key component of the test phase. So some things are never finished. We work in an infinite loop, and we refine our problem solutions based on what we learn. And hopefully we solve these problems that we set out to define in the beginning. Now, some
Yes, so this is what I wanted to tell you about testing. And she explains it really well, in a very brief manner. That's why I shared this video with you guys. Okay. This brings me to the next part, that when you have captured your feedback or you've done your testing, when you come back with that feedback, you need to sort it and arrange it in this grid format, and it will be very helpful to you because feedback essentially is only of 4 types. These are the 4 types that largely cover everything that you can get in the form of feedback. Number 1 is positives, which obviously are +1s because you've done something right. Second one is constructive criticism, which tells you areas that you had probably not thought of, and the user is asking you if that piece is missing from the puzzle. So that is also very, very, very important. Thirdly, the questions that come from the users. It means that something in your design or product is not very apparent or explanatory by itself. So you need to solve that in terms of how it can be made more self-explanatory, more obvious and intuitive for the user. Fourth, and also very exciting part, is that sometimes users give you ideas that you can have probably not envisioned yourself when in the ideation phase or probably as part of your prototype. And these can be easily built up into your prototype to modify it even further and come up with better versions. So this is the feedback capture grid, and I will show you one video which explains how this works in function.
2 years ago, I created a video about a project where second grade students took on the role of IDEO toy lab inventors to design and build a toy for their kindergarten schoolmates. They were given the following driving question: how will you as toy lab inventors design a toy for kindergarten students? IDEO Toy Lab is a division of IDEO that designs toys and mobile apps inspired by kids' curiosity, imagination, and desire to play and learn. You can find a link to the video in the description below. In this video, I want to show you an awesome observational and feedback tool from the D School that our second grade students used during the testing phase. It is called the Feedback Capture Grid. And it allows students to capture their observational findings and user feedback during their testing session. After creating their first toy prototypes, the second graders visited the kindergarten class during their free choice period, a time when the kindergartners get to choose different stations that contain activities related to the content they are learning in class. The kinders got to play with the toys, while the toy inventors got to see if whether or not their toys were enjoyable and easy to play with, and also find insights that could help them improve their toys. The second graders used their feedback capture grid to document their new learnings and feedback during the testing session. The feedback capture grid contains 4 quadrants. In the first quadrant, the second graders wrote down their users' feedback on what they liked about their toy prototype. The second quadrant contained the user's constructive feedback, while the third quadrant contained the questions that arose during the testing. The fourth quadrant contained new ideas or improvements that emerged from the tests and the information they were looking to record. Using what they compiled in their feedback capture grid, they proceeded back to the prototype phase to refine and improve their toy prototypes. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about
Yes. So this sort of explains the feedback capture grid in action. Now, once you have the feedback, you get back to your prototyping phase and refining your product and your prototype into a concept or a more tangible thing. But this is also the time where you understand the complete journey of the product or the service, how it is going to fit into the user's life, in what context, in what environment, who will deliver it, or what will be the touch points where your user interacts with this app or your product or your service, how relevant it is going to be for them, and what value it is adding to their life, to their any place where they are going to be using that. In order to be able to define this process of how your product fits into the life of the user, and the things, the partnerships, the resources, and the costs that you need to incur to be able to think about it in a more focused manner. There is something which designers and also people in the marketing field, MBA fields, use very often these days, and it is called as the business model canvas. So business model canvas is a brilliant discovery by a Scandinavian designer come market guru, and he has given this 9 parameters which really help you to understand the kind of value that you offer your customer, the kind of relationships you form, what are the customer segments that you are catering to, and how all are you reaching them, whether you're reaching them through the app store, whether you're providing them a physical service, whether you're selling something in e-commerce platform or in a physical store. Who are your key partners? Who are your enablers? Who are, whether it's a store owner, whether it's a digital platform owner, whether it's, something else, your delivery partners. What are your activities involved? And who is your key resource? If there is a delivery service, then, all your delivery agents, all your payment portals, all of them become your resources. Based on all of this, you will decide, your cost structure and the value proposition over here. This will tell you how your revenue streams will flow in. Okay, this can be better explained through this video. Have a look.
An organization's business model can be described with 9 basic building blocks: your customer segments, your value proposition for each segment, the channels to reach customers, customer relationships you establish, the revenue streams you generate, the key resources and key activities you require to create value, the key partners, and the cost structure of the business model. But it's not sufficient to just enumerate the 9 building blocks. What you really want to do is to map them out on a pre-structured canvas. This is what we call the business model canvas, a tool that helps you map, discuss, design, and invent new business models. Let's briefly go through the 9 building blocks, starting with the customer segments. These are all the people or organizations for which you're creating value. This includes simple users and paying customers. For each segment, you have a specific value proposition. These are the bundles of products and services that create value for your customers. The channels describe through which touchpoints you're interacting with customers and delivering value. The customer relationships outline the type of relationship you're establishing with your customers. Revenue streams make clear how and through which pricing mechanisms your business model is capturing value. Then you need to describe the infrastructure to create, deliver, and capture value. The key resources show which assets are indispensable in your business model. The key activities show which things you really need to be able to perform well. The key partners show who can help you leverage your business model, since you won't own all key resources yourself, nor will you perform all key activities. Then once you understand your business model's infrastructure, you'll also have an idea of its cost structure. So with the business model canvas, you can map out your entire business model in one image. This works for startup entrepreneurs just as well as for the most senior executives.
So the reason that I included the business model canvas as a part of this discussion is because I feel, and I have seen it in some colleges, that students are very good in terms of idea generation and even to some extent in prototyping and testing. What they struggle with is identifying and actually making the decisions of when is a good time to take your product to the market and how to launch it. Because if you sit on an idea for too long, there is a greater likelihood that somebody else is going to make it and make profits out of that. So it is very important to understand how you can make it, what kind of help in terms of resources and activities and partners you will need, and even before that, that unique value proposition that is setting out your service or product apart from the others, or if it is a new niche need which has not been identified earlier, then how are you offering it and the kind of relationship that you establish with your users. So whenever you're building something, whenever you come across a new innovation, try to keep this also in mind, and it'll really help you in your journey ahead. With this, I want to share another short example with you of how testing and can really work and help designers to take key decisions, critical decisions about design. So this example is about the company GE, who were one of the pioneers in CT scanning, MRI machines. So they created these machines which was ergonomically designed to conduct CT scans for children. But the whole experience was very intimidating for children. Nobody wanted to go head first into the machine, which seemed like a big hole or a tunnel. And it can be really intimidating even for adults. So over 80% of the times, the children had to be sedated or drugged in some manner so that they are semi-conscious when they are, under that CT scan machine. And if they were not sedated, most likely what happened was that either they threw up or some nausea or some kind of problems that they were having. In order to overcome this, the designer at GE, they thought, why can't we make it something more desirable and pleasurable for the kids? And that is when, through one of their testing experiments and a user's feedback, they were able to create this, which is a CT Pirate Island adventure. It is an entire MRI experience, which is like playtime for kids. And the whole process became so enjoyable. Sometimes, even after the MRI or the CT scan was done, the kids did not want to leave the room because it was such a novel experience for them. They wanted to fully live the experience and become captains and pirates and their entire swordfish experience. So this is the kind of potential that good testing and capturing feedback at the right moment can create. I think that is all from my end. I will be willing to take questions.
Yes, ma'am. There are few questions in a chat box.
Okay.
So first one is from Gaurav. Is it necessary that we should have a good amount of capital to make the more efficient project model?
No, no. Actually, Gaurav, what you're asking is completely opposite of what I had said yesterday. That you need to go for low fidelity, very, very low cost, very cheap prototyping, which can be done very easily and discarded also because you will need to be, making it again and fresh ones from every now and then. So the whole idea of capital or monetary, putting in more revenue comes when you have tested a project and tested a product or service with the users. You get a good feedback, and then when you make a business model canvas, when you that time you will probably need to think of where your funds or capital can come from. Beyond that stage or before that stage, I don't think anything is such a limitation.
There is another question. Ma'am, how can we increase the efficiency in ideation and prototyping?
Okay, the efficiency in both these phases and in empathy phase also uh, comes with practice. I think the more you do it, आप जैसे ज़्यादा swimming करते हो, the faster you're able to swim, the more strokes that you can make. So I think it comes with practice. Like for example, when I was taking my first TT workshop 6 7 years ago, it was very difficult for me to conduct it. Although I have learned this over 6 7 years in a design school, practiced it in my job, but even then, to deliver it is a new experience. But over these years, I can somewhat understand the kind of questions and the problems that the students will have. Those students who are encountering this completely new world, and there are new terms to be learned, new processes to be followed. There is a new system or way of doing things. So this efficiency that you're talking about is only going to come through practice, and especially in ideation, if you have a bigger team and you need to democratize that process, that everybody should be able to contribute, then there will be much higher efficiency. Anything else, Sakit?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, can you suggest some more resources from where we can move forward in this journey in the design thinking? A really insightful session.
Yeah, actually, there are many more courses online. They are at, I think, Coursera has many courses, and there are some courses on Udemy, I think. I'm not too sure about the other platforms because I've not gone through them in detail. But I think there will be many aspects of this on YouTube and elsewhere also. But my personal recommendation would be to try and do it in any the smallest of project that you can think of, even if how do I you know some very mundane activities that I had done with small school children last year. That how do you reimagine the distribution of work, household chores in during the lockdown, because everybody is at home and there's more work for the primary caregiver or the mother, and how can you make it easier? So something as basic as that, if you can use the design thinking framework for that, so you can learn this or get better in it only by doing it more often. There are of course very good resources online, and I will be more than willing to share a few articles myself, but um, everything is going to lead you only up to a certain point, and then from there you have to do it in practice and then learn. Okay.
No, ma'am, that's it.
Okay.
No further questions.
All right. So I think everything that I had to share from my end, I shared with you guys, and I truly had a very good time with you all. Um, Although this was a different medium of interaction, and I could only interact with a few of you, but nonetheless, I try to bring in more content, bring in more diverse content, so that you truly learn and understand that how important this can be in your day-to-day life. Um, Given the complexities of our lifestyle these days, you can use it for so many things. Segregating waste at home, to how you can make your lifestyle more sustainable. I tried to doing this myself for my family. You know how we can take baby steps towards a greener lifestyle. So we started sorting our trash. We started segregating waste for composting at home. And believe me, it's much easier than we think it is, because once you start taking these small things, and there will be, deviations, of course, that, there will 1 or 2 days when you're too tired and lazy enough to segregate the waste, or, reuse the same water for, watering your plants, which, you would use for cleaning or whatever. So there are days when we also become lazy and don't do this. But of course, it's a beautiful feeling to know that you're doing something right. So you can use this for anything, even the most basic activities. Like if you have toddlers or children at home who are addicted to YouTube or screens, what can you do to make them interact with people more? Start with very basic questions, and in your day-to-day life that you are coming across. We also did it with some girls in a remote college, and the problems that they had was, how can we make school going or college going more legitimate? Because it is, when we go out in our society, people think ye sach ke ja rahe, they pata nahi kahan ja rahe. So we brainstorms with them, and the college got in the concept of having a uniform, so that it seems more educational and less controversial in their neighborhood. So there are many things that you can apply this to, very functional everyday problems. So that is what my advice to you all would be: to think, open your mind, think about things that bother you in day-to-day life. And I'm sure there must be many things, because you're young and there's so much energy, so much anger, and so much more positivity also, that things are not right, but I can make them right. Be it some things to do with politics, be it to policy making, to democracy, to, you have so many things to do, and truly make a difference. I think with that, I draw it to a close, and you know we can conclude this session. Thank you, NIT Raipur, and the entire student team that works with ESL. Thank you for having me and for this opportunity. I really hope that more and more of you would use this framework in your life, in your different challenges, and come up with innovations and products and services that can benefit everybody. And if you do get stuck anywhere, you can reach out to me. I am also on the board of mentors for your college, Eastville. So write to me if you need any help. And Saurabh, sir, is of course there. He can connect you to me. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much,